Okay, so nobody likes censorship in their anime and manga, correct? I mean, in general, in any media, I'd imagine you don't want censorship. You want to be able to read and watch the things that you love and enjoy in their original intended form. However, what if I told you that anime and manga, in a certain degree, has already been censored and you don't even know it?
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Let's talk about it.
I must go, must leave this house. I must go, the time is now. I must go, it's time to get out.
So I was having a discussion with my friend the other day where we was talking about Hunter x Hunter's 2011 anime, and I was giving him a little bit details. He's starting to get into the series, and I was telling him, yo, did you know that there is a Hunter x Hunter anime that came out before the 2011 version? And this is where I started stumbling upon the idea of, yo, dog, they did this to us right in front of our eyes, and we don't even know it. Because as I was looking at the art and I was reminiscing, because I have seen a bit of the old Hunter x Hunter anime, I was thinking to myself, wow, yo, this is really dark in comparison to the 2011 anime. Now, don't get me wrong, Hunter x Hunter's 2011 anime eventually gets darker as it continues on. In fact, so much so that they had to switch the time that the episodes came out, because it was just like, holy cow, this is coming out, you know what I'm saying, where kids can actually get their hands on it. So they actually even had to move it to a different block entirely. That's why originally it came out Saturday nights, and then it started coming out, I think, Tuesday afternoon for us, but over there in Japan it was like Tuesday at a ridiculous time. And that's because the original source material itself was a lot darker. If you go back to the original Hunter x Hunter anime, the color palette alone will show you the vast difference between this anime that came out late 90s, early 2000s to the 2011 one, where even down to Gon's green jumpsuit, it's pretty much way brighter. You look at the color palettes, you look at, in particular, the violence and gore that would go down, it was vastly darker. And then that thought got me even further to thinking, well, okay, if Hunter x Hunter did this, right, and granted it's a newer adaptation, is there any other examples? And then I started going down the rabbit hole. Okay, so who here likes anime? Anyone? Anyone? You know how we're always talking about Wit Studio and how they're one of the best anime studios to come out of Japan? Well, what if I told you there was a way to have Wit Studio in your pocket? You probably heard me reference Wit Studio from time to time for their work on series such as Spy Family, Ranking of Kings, the first 3 seasons of Attack on Titan. Well, Wit Studio has a new anime series called Vampire in the Garden, which you can watch on Netflix right now, and Ucolex is working together with Wit Studio to redefine trading cards into the digital space to bring you an interactive experience. Now, you might be thinking, well, digital cards are cool and all, but I really like physical. And they have you covered on that as well. They are offering both digital and physical card packs. There are a unique set of 12,000 packs, which equals a total of 36,000 digital cards with extra features, which unlock when you reach specific community goals. When you buy a pack for $14.99, you'll get 3 random cards and a chance to receive common, uncommon, or even rare cards. Common cards will give you 2 points, uncommon will give you 10 points, and rare will give you 25 points. But, they also have a 4th type of rarity card called Epic that can only be achieved through completing the quest Redemption. Completing a quest can also get you an epic digital card or physical card sent to your home. Now, with the digital epic cards, there's 4 characters: Momo, Fine, Nobara, and Allegro, and each card costs 100 points to redeem 1 digital epic card out of 1,000 available. By spending 50 points, you can redeem physical cards of Momo and Fine. With 40 points, you can redeem Allegro and Nobara, and with 30 points, redeem Connie. They also provide a community aspect where every time a landmark is reached for packs sold, new rewards will unlock. They aren't playing around. If the community reaches 10,000 packs sold, 5 lucky card holders will win a VIP ticket to LA Comic-Con in December of 2022. If we manage to get 12,000 packs sold, 100 lucky winners will receive a digital copy of 10 original sketches from Wit Studios animators. I ain't gonna lie, I would absolutely love some custom work from Wit Studio. I mean, they're top of the line. So now you're probably asking, yo, how do I get all this awesome stuff? Well, no worries, Fornever got you covered. I got the link right here on the screen, but you can also click on it down in the description below and it'll take you where you need to go. And how about I sweeten the deal for you? You can get 20% off the retail price, which I mentioned was $14.99 for a character pack. You just need to use the code that's right here on the screen at the checkout page. So what are you waiting for? If this seems like something you're interested in and you're an anime fan, you can enjoy watching Vampire in the Garden and get to start a cool collection of trading cards from one of the coolest studios in the anime industry, Wit Studio. Links in the description below. I hope you join up and get some of these awesome cards. From Dragon Ball Z to Dragon Ball Kai alone, I remember very vividly that when you go to the scene in particular where Piccolo uses the Makanko Sappo special beam cannon to blast through Goku and Raditz, no blood. In fact, I would argue that Dragon Ball Super, in comparison to its predecessor Dragon Ball Z, is a lot more lighthearted in terms of the violence and gore that is shown. You see, for crying out loud, back in the Frieza saga and whatnot, it was just way more brutal and violent. You got Vegeta snapping necks, jumping on dudes' heads, all sorts of insane stuff that, while yes, there's still definitely combat and action and all that in Dragon Ball Super, you don't really necessarily even see some of the violence that you would get from Dragon Ball Z. Now, by no means am I advocating we need more violence in our anime, or am I saying that there is no violence in anime and manga, because I could show you a few different examples, in particular the outliers like Attack on Titan, where you go and you see a lot of messed up stuff, but that's definitely more so of the outliers and not the standard nowadays when it comes to anime and manga. And I more so want to focus on anime because I do believe that a lot of manga, they still are bringing the heat in terms of the darkness, the violence, the gore, all of those different aspects of manga that you even got back in the day. So it's more so really an anime thing. And I think this was something that we didn't really think of at the time. You know, you go back 10 years where everybody was champion, let's get anime more popular, let's get it to the point where it's socially acceptable like video games. We really wanted that, but there has been a lot of different costs along the way in terms of what anime is becoming. Because as anime has gone more mainstream, and particularly globally, we've seen the rise and climb of anime and manga, but especially anime, kind of being, I don't want to say necessarily dumbed down, but you're definitely not getting that same tone that you would get from the 90s and even early 2000s. Back in some of those days, you would get things along the lines of freaking people ripping spines out of somebody's heads on a damn regular. Shows that honestly shouldn't have been for children, but were children's shows, where you would see all sorts of body parts flying, people exploding. It was just really freaking graphic. And granted, I would say now as a parent, it's probably a better thing that these shows that honestly are aimed at children aren't showing those type of aspects, but it's still definitely noticeable at the very least for me. And if you really even think about it, if you're a massive fan of anime and you've seen stuff from the 80s and 90s and you're watching now, you will see too that it already got censored right before our eyes and we just didn't really notice it. Even compare the returns, like I said, something like Dragon Ball Super, where the IP for Dragon Ball made a massive return. You could go to something like, for example, Naruto and Boruto. Even early Naruto, where you see like Naruto stabbing his hand and blood coming everywhere, the color palettes, everything about it in comparison to its spin-off Boruto, it's like night and day. The amount of different things that they would show that they could even, I would argue, get away with, they're not getting away with it today. And while by no means am I saying, hey, censorship is a good thing, I will say that censorship in certain areas is not necessarily something to frown upon. For crying out loud, there are some series that desperately shouldn't be viewed by damn near anybody. Like when the whole thing happened with Kentaro Yabuki's Ayakashi Triangle, I wasn't necessarily mad about some of that stuff because I felt like, okay, that's kind of crossing the line, because censorship isn't always a bad thing. Am I saying, yeah, censor this and that? No, but when I see certain aspects of it, I look at it for what it is and I try to be a little bit objective, because I know most people, they're like, oh my god, I hate censorship, and I'm definitely on board. I miss looking at some of the anime from the 80s and 90s and seeing some of this stuff that felt like, yeah, this is even beyond what would happen realistically. You know, some of those old Gundam shows, you go to War in the Pocket, for crying out loud, you'd have the most campiest music and you'd have like a little kid protagonist, but you see people dying left and right, you see people bodies getting ripped to shreds and stuff like that. It was definitely something that maybe back then I would have said like, yeah, let's show it, but now it's like, should kids really on a Saturday morning see bodies being exploded to bits? I think that was also something to do with a cultural difference. I think Japan, as time has gone on, has kind of more so embraced what the world is and kind of has opened up a little bit, a la, I think like One Piece with Wano's borders. It kind of happened like that, because even if you look at what was necessary before and what isn't a thing now, something like for kids entertainment, for kids entertainment isn't really even a necessity anymore, because Japan themselves has actually taken the source material and guided it down a different direction. The reason why 4Kids existed, obviously there was some massive negativity from it, like, hey, you know, One Piece switching a cigarette to a lollipop. But even then, if you think about it, like, some kids might take it as like promoting, like, yo, smoking is cool, Sanji is smoking. So I understand that aspect. There was a necessary evil to a certain degree with 4Kids entertainment that, in retrospect, granted, I look back and I'm like, yeah, I don't like any of those changes. I think it was horrible. Skipping arcs is definitely a no-no. I don't care what type of censorship you're looking at. And when it comes to skipping arcs and rewriting entire dialogue, messing with the message of a series, that is problematic. No way you slice it can you say, hey, yeah, that's great, let's skip 3 arcs and jump around. Like, that was horrible. But for what 4Kids did provide in terms of, like, hey, you know, certain series, they're not even going to be able to come over here. We're not even going to be able to license them unless we have a distributor that is kind of adapting the materials from where it comes from, that's, again, dark in nature, to be more acceptable over here. But now, because anime itself, when it comes to, at the very least, a lot of the mainstream titles are already keeping some of those ideas in mind, when even in the development stage, there's no real need for it anymore, because the materials itself has been somewhat, I guess you could even say, subconsciously censored. I mean, just looking at the shonen of now in comparison to the shonen of like the 80s and 90s and stuff like that, of Rurouni Kenshin, again, OG Dragon Ball Z, even the comedy in OG Dragon Ball, Goku slapping private parts around there saying, hey, are you a boy or a girl? You think that's gonna fly in 2022? And you look at some of the stuff that happens now with anime, like a Black Clover or even a My Hero Academia, the anime adaptations, they're nowhere close to as dark and as even vile of the feel and tone that you would get from the older stuff. I mean, down to, like I referenced earlier with Hunter x Hunter, the color palettes are brighter, the blood is a lot less apparent. You're usually only gonna see blood in certain instances, either like maybe a line on the mouth or when they spit up to kind of demonstrate like, hey, this is a big foe. Back in the days, it would be like, hey, these are human beings, you know. Rurouni Kenshin, when he slices somebody down, even though he used a wooden sword, but you get the reference, when one of the guys that actually were straight up slicing people up, it would be very apparent, like, yo, this is real. And to a certain degree, in my older age, while I also understand that, yo, dog, kids nowadays, they shouldn't be seeing that, especially with social media and stuff like that, I definitely feel like I miss it, and it was something that added to the, I guess, overall aesthetic and feel of anime. This is why when you was younger, anime almost felt like such a mystery, you know, when even if you didn't know necessarily about anime, if you just knew about Dragon Ball or Cowboy Bebop or Trigun or anything that was on Toonami and Adult Swim and whatnot, it almost felt like, wow, this is something totally different in comparison to what we get. We was getting stuff like, you know, the Animaniacs. We had an outlier or two ourselves, like Batman the Animated Series that was telling more adult-centered stories and whatnot, but we didn't really have that over here in the US. And even now, we're kind of starting to little by little compete with what anime has, because now things are a little bit more on an even playing field. Everybody can do what they can, because again, subconsciously, there's almost been like a censorship inserted in people's minds as they're bringing these anime forward. Granted, there's also big corporations and companies that when they're looking at the manga or the light novels, whatever source material, they're keeping that in mind. But I think one of the major factors that made censorship a thing without us even realizing it is that the source itself has been kind of, I don't want to say tampered with per se, but definitely regulated. People aren't just going batshit crazy with their creations anymore, minus a few select series, and just doing whatever. Nowadays, people are actually keeping some of those things in mind, especially when they want to make their series a success and they want their series on the movie theaters. They want their series to be up on a plateau. They're not going to go full throttle. Even series like Demon Slayer, where things can get mighty violent, if you compare it to any of the violent stuff from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, there is no comparison. The colors are brighter. The characters are a little bit more wackier. They don't feel like real human beings, so to speak, oftentimes. And that's partially due to this metaphoric censorship that has already began before we even realized it. And if you follow me, you know that I absolutely love anime and manga. I mean, hello, look behind me, whole bunch of anime and manga. So by no means am I saying the anime of today is bad. It's almost like if it's a different medium to a certain degree entirely, where if you get those more graphic and realistic feeling series like an Attack on Titan, you're gonna appreciate it more because it's become more of a rarity instead of a commonality of what the medium itself used to bring to the table of, yo, these are adult cartoons. These are cartoons that by no means, majority of them minus the Pokemons and whatnot, should actually be seen by kids. Even over there in Japan, I'd argue that, yo, dog, like, what are they doing showing some of this shit to these children? And that's also something even again reflected somewhat in the manga when you get something like, you know, Parasite the Maxim, and you get that anime adaptation from Madhouse from 2014, you see the difference of, my god, their heads are being split wide open and shit, and it's just freaking like, oh, so freaking nasty to look at, because again, at that time period, they were, I don't want to say more free, but they were definitely thinking that they can do whatever. And granted, any creator still has the liberties, whether you're an independent creator on webtoons, whether you're serialized or whatnot, you always have the liberties to do what you want. It's just a matter of, well, what I want, will it allow me to ascend to that next level of success? Success in and of itself, compared to what it was back then to what it is now, also is something that arguably you could add is a form of censorship. And you're probably like, yo, Fornev, how is success a form of censorship? Well, think about it. On YouTube nowadays, if I was to start this video just screaming the F word for the first 30 seconds, 1, the video ain't getting monetized. 2, YouTube might take the video down. 3, they aren't going to push that video for absolutely nothing because they don't want kids to see some grown-ass man screaming So in and of itself, right there, the thought of, well, maybe I shouldn't do that then. Maybe I shouldn't start off with, I don't know, cosplaying as a bloody character, yelling out, because I kind of want my videos to get watched by as many people as possible. And then that even goes down further into the rabbit hole of the internet connecting everybody and kind of allowing for different avenues of independent creators to be able to reach mass amounts of people. But again, at what cost? Is it at the cost of your freedom of expression and art? And by no means, again, I want to stress, series like what happened with Ayakashi Triangle and certain panels and that they had to skip stuff entirely, I'm not necessarily upset about it. Again, that's my own morality of that's really freaking nasty. I'm not necessarily indicating and advocating for the violence either, but there's certain things where morally, like, hey, it is what it is. I'm not saying go censor it, but if it happens, I'm not going to be mad at it either. But there's definitely a notable difference. You go to Hunter x Hunter, old anime, to 2011. You go from Dragon Ball Z to Dragon Ball Kai to Dragon Ball Super. You see almost the evolution of what has happened and what transpired to the mediums. Brighter color palettes, less blood, less violence, less gore. So when you get the outliers, you get the Attack on Titans, and I know I've referenced it like a million times, but you get those type of series, you look and you're like, what anime used to be to a certain degree. But I'm definitely extremely curious what you guys think about this whole discussion. Do you feel like anime as a medium, as a whole, as it stands right now here in 2022, has already been censored? It's already happened and we kind of just subconsciously didn't realize it yet? And what is your take on looking back? Like, do you watch older anime? What do you see in terms of like differences from what they did back then till now? Obviously they were doing things differently in terms of they were using, you know, film. The production process was in and of itself completely different, but in terms of the tone, the language, all of that different stuff, did it feel like it was a lot more common to get those out of the box insane forms of artistic expression? Or you think that, nah, it's still all over the place? By no means am I saying anime is, you know, all, hey, we're in church right now with it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, yo, anime as it stands right now in comparison to what it was in the 80s and 90s is already a lot more lighter. So when you add another layer of when they do censor stuff, sometimes it's like, sometimes it's like, dog, how much more censorship do you want? Like, can I get some anime with my censorship? Your overall thoughts and expectations for where the industry is going to go moving forward. Unfortunately, considering that they continue to push the boundaries and the way society is right now, I don't see it going at any given point in reverse, other than when the industry, if the industry inevitably collapses, that'll probably be where artists are free again to do what they like, and we'll probably get that same type of vibe of the 80s and 90s. We just gotta hope it's in our lifetime time, which it possibly can if you watch my other video where I talked about what's happening with the streaming wars and the anime industry as a whole. Things aren't as peachy keen as they seem. But that's all I have for this one. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. And remember the golden rule: anime and manga for life, bye! Have an awesome day. Peace in. And yeah, anime already has kind of had a little layer of censorship throughout the years, and it might only get worse as we progress. We'll see. Have an awesome one.
I have a dream, alone in my room as I sit with the tea. Couldn't possibly think what I often see, and you don't even know how I often blink. Lights be flashing and looking at me, such a odd, unique, yet I'm so unique, and you're looking at me. If the walls could talk, they would probably read bleak, and I'd probably say, bitch, get the fuck off me.